It is 2024, and a happy new year it is. We all know why. You're here, and I'm here. We're going to have the infamous What I Made in 2023. I was actually really excited to do this, and then I was feeling all this pressure because I was watching everyone else's videos come out of like what they made in 2023. I was looking at what I would consider a humble pile of sweaters. I don't have too many. I think I have maybe 5 or 6 sweaters. And I remember watching as like Athena from Seedling Stitch, her video came out, and then Creabea's video came out, and I think her video was like, she had like 30 some finished objects. It was just insane. I don't know how she knits that many sweaters in a year. I certainly cannot do that, and so this is my little pep talk to myself and to anyone else out there that you should never feel as if like you haven't done enough. I think we oftentimes forget, especially with being on social media now, and you're constantly kind of comparing yourself to other people naturally and inherently, that, you know, oh, I'm not doing enough, or oh, I didn't do as much as these other people, and you just gotta get that out of here right now. I certainly am no exception. I definitely did not get as much done as I would have liked to, but I think this is where this platform and this practice really works for me, and what I really enjoy about it is I can look back on this last year and I can see, wow, even though I didn't do everything that maybe I wanted to do, I still did all of this, and they're sitting on my chair next to me, and I can appreciate the fact that I now have these things in my wardrobe that I've taken a lot of time, money, and investment to make, and that I will have for a very long time. So no matter how much you finish or don't finish in a year, here on this channel, I really take seriously my name, which is Every Stitch Does Count. No matter how small of a step you're making towards any of your goals, it is important and valuable, and it all adds up and compounds to be many steps. So without further ado, I'm gonna get right through and start going through the things that I made. I'm gonna have up on the side for everybody the name of the pattern, who published the pattern, and then the yarns that I use. So I'm not gonna spend a ton of time walking through and talking through things that I've already mentioned in other videos. I'm just gonna put that kind of information on the side. So if you want to know what I used or who wrote the pattern, you can find that there. What I'm gonna spend a lot of time doing is really talking through what I like about the finished project and what I don't like so much about it, in terms of the yarn, the material that I used, and then the fit and the actual garment itself, and how much wear I get out of it, how much wear I don't get out of it. Hopefully that'll give a nice, well-rounded view of everything for everybody, and that people will find some enjoyment, but also some value out of that. I'll just tell you quickly what I'm wearing. I'm wearing my Billie Pullover by Sari Norland, and this was made with the Brooklyn Tweeds Arbor yarn in rusted something, burnished rust. Maybe there's the color burnished. I can't remember. The first sweater that I'm going to talk about is my Petite Knit sweater, which is the October jacket. Is right here. She's huge. I need to depill it. It's very, very fuzzy. I don't wear this sweater, or this jacket really, as much as I would like to wear it, and it's not about the design. I think the design is great. I love the pockets. I love how giant it is. This was an absolute beast to knit. It's all done in all over brioche stitch, and it was done on a US 4, so it took like literally forever. I was working on this for maybe 5 or 6 months, and it just took me a really long time to finish. The design is great. I would recommend the design to anybody. It's actually a really easy pattern as soon as you can grasp the brioche stitch itself and how to do that. The increases are really simple. It's all very straightforward. There's almost no shaping in this. I mean, there's a little bit of shoulder shaping on the back, but other than that, there's no shaping. You're just going in straight lines. It's a drop shoulder construction, and there's no shaping on the sleeve. So minimal shaping that you have to do, which always makes it a bit easier. It's a really boxy, oversized fit, which I think is flattering on a lot of people, especially when it's done in these like really big chunky knits. It's hard for people like not to look good in them. The yarn itself, as you can see, both close up and probably in the far away shots that I'm showing you, is very fuzzy. It pills like mad and it sheds. I think that's why I don't wear and use it as much. Like if you look on the inside of the sweater, if I turn it inside out, there's all this fuzz just shedding off. And that's definitely coming from the alpaca. So I made this with 2 yarns. One I purchased from Maryland Sheep and Wool 2022. It was 100% farm grown Surrey alpaca yarn. And then I held it double with a unknown name, I forget the name, and I don't have any of the tags for it anymore. Just a woolen spun like Shetland yarn. And so that definitely gave the yarn and the material a bit of structure, but the alpaca in it still is a very loose spin. There's not a lot of twist in it. It's a pretty short fiber, and so that is what causes it to pill and fluff and shed, because when you're spinning something, the amount of twist you have in it determines how much the microfibers that make up that staple length or whatever you're spinning is going to come out. And so that was a very loose spin with a pretty short staple, which means that the fiber doesn't have as much space to cling onto other fibers and to hold on to itself. And you have lots of more ends of individual fibers kind of, fluffing out and blooming and coming out of the yarn. I'm not saying that necessarily as a positive or a negative. It is a bit of a negative for me personally, just because I don't like shedding. I don't like things coming off of my sweater, and it just requires more maintenance. So what I really need to do is just get a deep pillar and depill it when I want to wear it and after I wear it, and that would solve the problem. I'm kind of curious if that sweater will ever stop shedding and pilling, because sometimes, sweaters all naturally will felt a little bit where there's more friction. So the armpits of sweaters will always felt a little bit. The elbows will always felt a little bit because there's more friction in those places. And felting is a double-edged sword, in my opinion, because on one hand, if something felts, it's not going to shed or pill as much anymore. But you might lose some of the definition, and it might alter the size and shape of things. You see sweaters all the time that people have worn for a really long time. They have a permanent indent where their elbow is, because the sweater is just like literally molded to the shape of their body. So it comes with the territory of making your own clothing out of natural fibers. Natural fibers are always going to want to felt to themselves and kind of do their own thing. They retain the shape that they're in, and our arms are typically bent, so it's gonna hold that shape. All in all though, really like that sweater. I love wearing it when I do wear it. I just need to get a depiller to maintain it a bit more, so I'm not always feeling like it's looking like too scruffy to take out. The next sweater that I finished in 2023 was my Cara sweater. This sweater is an all-over cable design sweater, and I made this with an mostly Icelandic and merino yarn that I also purchased from Maryland Sheep and Wool. This sweater I love. It's kind of intense to wear. Like, it's so thick and heavy and warm that it has to be really cold for me to bust this out. And I also don't have that many like collared button-up shirts that I like, and that's how I would most like to wear and style this, with it over something like that. I just think that's a really classy, chic way to wear cabled sweaters. If you like cables, I can't recommend this pattern enough. I think it was a joy to knit. I did have a bit of a weird situation with the yoke of this sweater. It came out massive. I think I had originally started with the 3rd size, and I did it exactly as the pattern indicated, and then I took it off the needle after I had just split for sleeves. So I had done maybe an inch or 2, and I tried it on, and it was going to be disgustingly big on 2 fronts. It was going to be so big that I wasn't going to have enough material to finish the sweater, and it was going to be so big that it just looked weird. like too big, not the cute oversized, oh, she's so comfy. It was gonna look like, girl, that doesn't fit you. And so I ripped it out. I didn't count any stitches. I didn't do any of that, correctly. I just haphazardly ripped it back until I knew the yoke was smaller than I needed it. And I did that because my strategy was going to be to just rip it back and increase to the point of knowing it was the size I needed. So I didn't really count stitches. When I split for sleeves, I actually ended up knitting the second size. Like my stitch count worked out to be the second size. That got me the fit that I wanted in terms of the diameter of the yoke. Now, something else that I did was I made the yoke depth a lot deeper than the pattern originally indicated. And I've said this before, but the yoke depth is this line. So your raglan line, or the length between your neck and the underside of your armpit. That is your yoke depth. Depending on how deep you want your yoke, that is what determines like how much your sweater or your shirt or whatever you're making is like up in your armpit. I hate it when sweaters are up in my armpit. The minimum amount of ease that I want in my yoke depth is probably 1.5 inches. I really don't like how they feel, how they wear when it's any less than that. And so this one, as you'll see in the clip when I'm wearing it, is much deeper. I think this is maybe 4 inches deeper than my true like yoke depth. And I'm happy I did that because one, it gives it, I think, a bit more relaxed fit that I enjoy wearing more, but it's also easier to layer and it doesn't feel as bunchy. The yarn itself, I think is great. It's definitely more rustic than I've used in the past, but I don't find it to be scratchy. Maybe my tolerance is just getting stronger. The merino content in this sweater with the Icelandic yarn makes it feel a lot more wearable and a lot softer. I was a little bit concerned about the stitch definition fading a bit because the merino content in it does fluff and shed more than the Icelandic. Little sheep 101. Icelandic sheep are long-wooled sheep, and so the length of their fibers are much longer. Merinos, much, much shorter, much finer. It's not going to have that hair-like texture that you see with really rustic or like the Icelandic yarns. I don't know that I love the combination of the two, to be honest. Like, I think it worked out fine, and obviously I like the sweater and I like wearing it. But if I was to do it again, I think I would probably just get a pure Icelandic yarn or a pure merino, because the effects of it is that there's like this fuzz factor and it feels almost like the fibers are too different. It does make it a bit softer. So I don't know. It all comes down to personal preference and your personal opinion of what you want. This was meant to be an outerwear piece, so I didn't really have intention or desire to wear it next to my skin. Wanted it to be like a layering outerwear piece. And so I kind of just wish that it was all Icelandic yarn instead of having that merino content in there. Because I think if it had been all Icelandic, one, I think the stitch definition would have held up better. And I think that it just would have been more of what I was originally imagining it to be. But yeah, this is my Cara sweater. She still is one of my favorite and like most prized possessions because I just love, I go mad over cable sweaters like this. I think they're so chic. I think they're so classy, so timeless. And I want my legacy to be cable sweaters. The next thing I made was kind of an in-between project sweater. I don't have too much to say about this. It's my Alice top. I made this with kind of wacky yarn that ended up being one of my favorites. It was the only non-wool item that I made all of 2023. I was in between projects. I was ripping some things out, starting some things over again, and I just really wanted something easy, mindless, that I could get done in a couple of days, and the Alice top was definitely it. Didn't make any modifications to this pattern except for the fact that I did an additional I-cord edging after I had finished it to both the outer arms and the bottom. And I did that because before it was all raw edges, so there was no edge stitch at all, which I thought was a little weird anyway, but Petite Knit, you do you. But essentially what that meant in this yarn, and maybe it came down to the yarn that I used, but before I added edge stitches, this would like roll in on itself and it would look much narrower. And then the bottom of this would, you know, curl up. And it just looked very unfinished to me. And so I went back, just did a 2-stitch I-cord edge around. I did do 2 I-cord stitches for every 3 regular stitches. And I did that because this was a very open, like gaping armhole. And I didn't like that, and so I wanted the I-cord edge to, you know, cinch it in a bit and give it more structure. So I did maybe 30% less I-cord stitches going around than there would have been if I went through, you know, every single leg where it indicated that there was a stitch. So on the bottom though, I didn't want it to cinch in at all. In fact, I wanted it to flare a bit, so I did 1 stitch per 1 I-cord stitch, so it exactly will match up the whole way around. That's just like a fun little tip that I heard from somewhere. I don't even remember where. You can always kind of, if your modifications are slight enough, you can do a lot without ripping things out. And sometimes just adding an additional edge stitch around something can really go a long way in making it look really polished, really finished, and just much nicer. I love this top. I wore it a lot this summer. Mid-summer, end of summer, August, I finished my Calypso sweater. This was definitely one of my pride and joys. Saw a picture of this from Happy Go Knitty. She had posted her work in progress picture of making this, and it was one of those things. I think I was really drawn to the colors that she used. It really expanded my mind of like, oh, I wonder what I could make. I did the spin cycle yarns, which is what the pattern calls for, and then I used just a sport weight wool and a silk mohair held double for the white, which is the main body color. This was a really simple design. The yoke is done in a circular yoke. There's no raglan, it's just circular colorwork yoke, and then you split for sleeves. I did straight sleeves and I did a straight body, so no shaping whatsoever. I think the original pattern has a little bit of color work on the bottoms, but I don't really love that look, and so I just opted for no color work. The only thing that I don't love about it is the neckline, and that's because the neckline is only knit in the spin cycle dyed in the skein, or whatever the name of it is. I think it's dyed in the skein. That's the only thing that the yoke is knit in. I think the spin cycle yarns can be pretty in certain instances, but I've said this before, they're just not my thing. I don't love them. It's a superwash base, so it's been more processed than the white in this sweater, which is an undyed, like minimally processed yarn. And so I don't know how to quite to explain this, but the collar is just flimsy feeling, and it feels like it will stretch and flop, and like that maybe even at some point I might need to put some elastic in the neckline because it will stretch out on itself. So I don't love the neckline of this, but everything else about the sweater I really like, and I do wear it a lot. I find that I can wear this sweater just as a top, or I can wear it as a layering piece if I have like a collared shirt underneath it. And I really like sweaters like that I feel like are able to be worn in lots of different ways. For the hem and the cuff, I did a twisted rib and then a tubular Italian bind off, which is usually my preferred bind off method. I will say that there's no spin cycle yarn that will give you an exact color gradient like that. That was achieved all through myself managing and picking out the colors that I wanted between 3 totally different spin cycle yarn skeins. So if I was to make this sweater again, I probably wouldn't do that. while I think this effect is really cool, it was a huge pain to be color managing and not the most enjoyable process, I would say. Just keep that in mind if you see this and you're like, ooh, I want that. Maybe find a different yarn that isn't spin cycle, that is almost like an ombre yarn. They have some yarns like that for like socks and stuff where it's gonna ombre through a different color family. And that would probably work better for you if you want an effect that is similar to this, which is like kind of a rainbow effect where it goes, you know, dark to light. So just something to keep in mind. But I was really proud of this when I made it, and I wear it a lot. It's definitely probably my most striking sweater that I have, and it was kind of out of my comfort zone. I don't usually do bright colors like this, but it was a lot of fun. All right, the next thing that I finished was my test knit that I did for Lucy. This is her. This is the Golden Fall sweater. This sweater was such a joy to knit. It was the first time I had done lace. It was the first time I had used Rowan felted tweed and then the Sandnes Garn tin silk mohair yarns. I cannot say enough good things about this sweater. I think this might be my favorite make of 2023. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, I've already worn it a ton. I could wear this every day. It can be casual. It can be dressy. It can be like just lounging around the house in it. You can wear it out, and I feel just very comfortable in this. I think that this sweater truly does not look homemade, and I don't say that to toot my own horn. I mean, I think a lot of that comes down to the design and to the yarn choice, not so much like I didn't come up with this, like I just followed pattern, right? The yarn itself, I can't say enough good things about the yarn. I think the Rowan felted tweed yarn with the combination of that silk mohair. I've worn this so much, and there's literally no sign whatsoever of pilling anywhere. I'm truly amazed, actually, at how well it has held up, even in the places where it gets the most wear, like the armpit area. So I love everything about this sweater. I love the way it fits. I love the hem on it. I'd never done a hem like that, and it looks more like a blouse opposed to a sweater to me. I would recommend the pattern. I'd recommend the design. I think the lace motif on it is pretty easy. It's really just yarn overs and then knitting 3 together, and then you learn how to do the bobbles with the crochet hook method, which is now my preferred method because you can get, you know, such tight, defined little bobbles that stick out. And I have nothing else to say about this other than you should go buy the pattern and you should make it and then tag me in it so that I can see what you made because I love it. The last sweater that I finished of 2023 was my Tor Light sweater. If you watched this podcast episode where I talk about this as a finished object, I think it's episode 7, so a couple episodes back, you will be familiar with the saga that was this sweater. I'm not going to go into it again because it's a long story. If you want to rewatch it, you should go back and watch episode 7. But to give you the Spark Notes version, essentially, this sweater was a bottom-up construction, which not my favorite. I had knit the bottom, I knit the sleeves, I had finished it. I'd attached the yoke, and I hadn't done the collar yet. So I had done all the color work, everything was put together, and then I was like, I should probably try this on to see how it fits. And I tried it on. The yoke was, if this is my armpit up here, the yoke was like, oh, like up here. What that meant was the color work got like pulled in funny because it was being stretched the wrong way. The sleeves were now too short because there wasn't enough room in the yoke to give the sleeves and the body more length. And I was like, oh God, this is not good. I wasn't going to rip it out and not wear it. And I wasn't going to finish it, not be able to wear it and not have it fit. My mom bought me the yarn too, so I didn't want to give the sweater away because she bought me the yarn and it was like special to me. And so what I ended up doing was I ran 2 threads through 2 rows of stitches right before the yoke got joined together. So essentially, I detached the sleeves from the yoke and I detached the body from the yoke, and then I put all the yoke stitches back onto circular needles, and I added maybe 2 inches of yoke, and then I Kirschner stitched the sleeves, the body, and the underarms all back together again after I had lengthened the yoke. Took forever. I think the cutting everything apart took me, I was watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel at the time, so I think it took me 3 episodes, which is about 3 hours, to separate everything and get everything on needles, everything organized. And then knitting the yoke was easy because all the increases were done. I wasn't going to change any stitch counts, so that took maybe 2 more episodes, just kind of doing stockinette. Like, there's a lot of stitches, so it took longer than expected. But then the Kirschner stitching everything back together again, I want to say that took me like 6 episodes. I felt like I got through a season and a half or something over the course of a few days to get it all stitched back together again. And I had never done that before. I saw a video of Lily Kate Makes showing you how to lengthen a sweater. And I was like, well, shoot, if she can lengthen a sweater, you can certainly lengthen it anywhere in theory. But I didn't quite know how it was all going to get stitched back together again, and it ended up being fine. And now I can say that this was like my holiday sweater. I wore this to my grandpa's 100th birthday party that we had right around Christmas because his birthday is the 22nd. I wear this sweater a lot. It has started to pill slightly, but it's a pretty fuzzy, soft yarn combination that I had, and so I expected that, and with a deep pilling session it'll look like brand new again. It's warm, but it's not too warm. It ended up fitting like a glove, which I can't believe considering what I did to her. But I really love it. It's really heavy, and it's got this really beautiful drape to it because one of the yarns that I used has like a pretty high linen and silk content, and so it just makes it really drapey. This is also one of those sweaters that I feel like no one asks me ever if I made it, which to me, in my opinion, is like the highest compliment that you can pay me, is to not ask me if I made it, because that means that it doesn't look like something you made. It looks like something you bought, maybe something you bought in like a boutique. And that is always what I'm going for, because I think the things that you see in the boutiques and the stores and online, like, they're beautiful sweaters, but at the end of the day, people don't really know anymore how to make those types of things with their hands. And I'm like fascinated with the fact that you can do it with your hands, and that's just so cool to me. So this is my last sweater of 2023. I loved it. I love the yarn. Thanks, Mom, for the yarn. And yeah, I'm happy I didn't give up with this one because it's really a special piece for me. It means a lot to me for a lot of different reasons. The last garment that I finished for 2023 was my tessellated vest by Andrea Mowry. I talked about this extensively in the last episode, so I'm not going to talk about it a whole lot. All in all, the color has really grown on me, even from the last episode. I think it's really cute. It kind of has a very 60s, like mod 60s vibe to it. Like, I don't really have these clothing items anymore, but I could really see this being cute with like a white button-up shirt that like fits really well, and a pleated skirt of some kind, and tights, and little boots or shoes or flats or whatever. It really has like a 60s kind of feel to it to me, and so I really like that about it. The yarn, I have my opinions about the yarn that is used in the pattern because I use the recommended yarn for the pattern. I'll just say in short, I feel personally that there are better yarns that you could buy that will maybe hold up a bit better over time that were cheaper than the yarn that I actually bought. I felt like the yarn was very expensive for the quality of it. Personal preference, personal opinion there, but this has grown on me. And I'm happy I finished it for 2023 because it was just kind of one of those things that was hanging over me towards the end of the year. It wasn't the most enjoyable to work on in my hands. I didn't love the mosaic color work and like constantly slipping stitches. I don't really know why. I just didn't love it. This is my tessellated vest, and yeah, she's cute. She's cute. I'm excited to style it in springtime. I feel like this will be something that I pull and want to wear in the springtime. All right, that is it for the garments portion of this. I did make a couple other things throughout the year. I made a little red scarf for my best friend's son that is in a video somewhere, but I don't have it with me anymore, obviously. So I'm not gonna talk about that too much. But the other thing, I didn't make too many accessories, but I did make a handful of little scarfy things. This was the most recent one I finished. This is a Alex scarf kind of dupe hack that I did. I followed the seedling stitch. She just posted like a free pattern that she came up with to do like a ribbed scarf, and so I did that with some Juniper Moon yarn that I had. This is my Sophie scarf that I made with that one skein of 100% Angora. Love this one. I've worn that a lot. And then these two are smaller versions of the Sophie scarf made with some La Bien Amy yarn and some Lamb and Kid Birdie yarn. Just different colors, which is why same base, different colors of the Birdie yarn. So that's why they come out in the different colors like that. The red is definitely my favorite. My last technically three finished objects are also gifts. So a set of gloves and a hat, and I used pattern from Fiber Tales. Her hat, I believe it's her grow hat, and then the something gloves. I can't remember the name of them. And I'm not gonna have a description on these because one, if you just go to Fiber Tales, you'll be able to find gloves and the hat. And the yarn that I used for this, I don't know where you can buy it. I got it, it was gifted to me by my best friend. She went to an estate sale, and this woman was selling a bunch of yarn, and she had these 4 skeins of like farm produced yarn. I would imagine it was somebody who had gone to like Maryland Sheep and Wool and bought yarn, because my friend lives in Maryland. And so I had 2 skeins of that yarn, and it's like a Corriedale worsted spun undyed natural fiber yarn. Very thick, very squishy. It's a dark color, so the pattern and the motif is pretty subtle, but I actually kind of like that. And then these are the gloves that match, and it has a very similar cable motif on it. And what I like about these gloves a lot is that you can fold the tops down. I thought this was so genius. You could fold the tops down if you wanted to, and then you have like true fingerless gloves. Your fingers are out and exposed. And then if it's cold, you can flip them back up. And on my hands, I have long fingers. You can make them as long as you want. But if you flip them back up, then you have essentially mittens, and just the very, very tips of your fingers like stick out. And I thought that was just genius, because I don't love fingerless knit gloves because I don't like that my fingers are out. I find that my hands are always cold. And so I liked that these kind of gave you the option to have it either way. You can have your fingers mostly covered, but still be able to have them tactile and do things. Or you can have it folded down if you want your hand like more free and able to do things. So I finished these right before Christmas, right before the new year. And yeah, that's all she wrote. That's all I did. That's all I did for 2023. I am like happy to look back on it all and see it all finished. I think it's, like I said in the beginning, it's easy to kind of feel like you're comparing yourself to other people, or like you're not doing enough, which is so silly because knitting is like the most relaxing hobby ever. And just the reality of the internet now with everything is you're always kind of comparing yourselves to other people. So I would just encourage you not to do that. I'm certainly working on myself, you know, to not do that. It's not about that. It's about your life, and no one else's life is your life. So just make what you want to make as much of it as you want to make. And if you have a night where you don't want to work on anything, like, don't work on anything. It's not the end of the world, and you shouldn't feel any pressure going into 2024 to compete with other people in that way. So that's something that I'm going to be taking into this next year. I'm really excited about this next year. I am still so happy that I get to share some of this part of myself on this channel with this community of people, and I'm excited to see where it goes in 2024 and see how it grows, see what I make, and just get to continue exploring this community, this industry, my creative journey with it. So with that, I'm gonna go. I will be back soon with hopefully I want to do a goals video of, you know, the things that I want to make over the course of this year, so that we can then come next year be able to look back and reflect on those goals and see, you know, what I was able to get through, what I wasn't, if things changed, like why they changed. And I find self practices like that really helpful, even just in my regular life. So I'm excited to get to bring you along for that. So we have that to look forward to, and then I will be back to the regular, you know, podcasting style videos that you are probably all so familiar with at this point. But with that, I hope you're all well. I hope you're all enjoying the new year, making what you want to make, and finding joy in your day-to-day and in your life. I'm gonna go, and I will see you all next time. Bye.